Everyone told me the Philippines was poor. Everyone. My coworkers, my family, travel forums, strangers on the internet. All of them said the same thing without hesitation. Watch your wallet. Don't expect too much. It's a third world country. I believed every word. I packed light, lowered every expectation I had, and booked a one-way ticket from the United States, convinced I was flying into hardship. But something happened on that trip that I have never fully been able to explain. Something I saw in the final days, something I almost missed entirely, that made me sit alone in a hotel room at midnight questioning everything I had ever been told about wealth, poverty, and what it actually means for a country to be rich. And I am not ready to tell you what it is yet. But I promise you we are getting there. If you are new here, subscribe right now because we do not do surface-level storytelling on this channel. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you are watching from. I want to see every country, every city in that comment section. Now let us get into this. I landed in Manila on a Tuesday, walked out of the airport, got into a car, and started moving through the city. And for the first hour, honestly, the narrative everyone sold me seemed to check out. Heavy traffic, crowded streets, buildings that looked tired. I remember thinking, okay, they were right. I prepared myself to spend 10 days being quietly sad about it. Then something small happened that I almost did not catch. We stopped at a red light near a busy intersection, and I watched a young boy, maybe 12 years old, weaving between cars selling bottled water. Normal enough, but then I looked closer. He was not desperate. He was not pleading with his eyes or slumping with exhaustion. He was calculating. He was watching which cars had their windows down, which drivers made eye contact, which lanes were about to move. He was reading that intersection like a chessboard, and in about 4 minutes he had sold every bottle he was carrying. He looked up, counted his money, and walked back to the sidewalk with the posture of someone who had just closed a deal. I did not know why that bothered me so much, but it stayed with me for the entire trip. Cebu was my second stop, and that is where the comfortable narrative I arrived with started to genuinely crack. I ended up sharing a table at a small restaurant with a woman named Marisol. We started talking the way strangers do when they are both eating alone. She was 27. She ran an export business. She was shipping handmade Filipino products to buyers in Germany, Japan, and across the United States. All of it managed from her phone from that same table in that same small restaurant. I asked her how long she had been doing it. She said 3 years. I asked if she ever thought about relocating to grow the business faster. She looked at me like I had asked her something genuinely strange. Why would I leave? She said. Everything I need is already here. Not proudly, not defensively, just plainly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I flew to Siargao next, and I want to be honest, I expected a quiet, underdeveloped island. What I walked into was a globally recognized surf destination with resorts that charged rates I would have hesitated to pay in California. All of it owned by local Filipino families. I spoke to one of the owners, a man in his late 40s who had never left the Philippines. His resort was fully booked for the next 4 months with guests from Australia, France, Brazil, and the United States. He was not lucky. He had spent 15 years building something intentional and specific and world-class, quietly, without anyone outside the surfing community paying attention, until they had no choice but to. But none of that. Not Marisol, not the resort owner, not even the boy at the intersection, prepared me for what happened in the mountains of Benguet. I want you to stay with me here because this is the part that broke something open in me. I was introduced to an elderly farmer named Mang Eddie. No formal education, never left his province. He had spent his entire life growing strawberries on a small plot of high-altitude land that his father had farmed before him and his grandfather before that. I expected a quiet, humble conversation about simple living. What I got instead was a man who knew the soil composition of every section of his land by memory, who knew exactly which hotels in Luzon were buying his product, what they were charging their guests for it, and what that margin meant for his next planting cycle. He was not just a farmer. He was a businessman operating with information and precision that most people with degrees do not have. I sat with him for almost 2 hours, and when I finally stood up to leave, he said something that I have been turning over in my mind ever since. He said, "The people who call us poor have never had to be resourceful." I did not respond. I did not have anything to say. I just walked back to my car and sat there for a long time. Now here is where I have to be honest with you in a way that is uncomfortable. When I got back to Manila for my final 2 days, I went looking for the version of the Philippines everyone had warned me about. Not to exploit it, not to film it, but because I needed to understand the full picture. And I found it. There are communities in this country that are genuinely struggling with infrastructure, with access, with generational cycles that are brutally hard to break. That is real, and it deserves to be said clearly. The hardship is not invented. But here is what I was not prepared for. Even in the hardest neighborhoods I walked through, I did not find hopelessness. I found the same thing I had been seeing since that boy at the intersection on day one. I found people who were not waiting, who were not frozen, who were operating with a level of ingenuity and forward motion that I have genuinely never seen concentrated in one place in my life. And that is when it finally hit me, the thing I had been circling for 10 days without being able to name it. The Philippines is not poor in the way the world means when it says poor. It is a country that has been underestimated so consistently, for so long by so many people with loud platforms, that the underestimation itself became the story. And while the world was busy repeating that story, the Philippines was quietly building something else entirely. Something that does not need the world's permission or validation to be real. Mang Eddie was right. The people who call this country poor have never had to be resourceful. And they have never had to be this resilient. I came to the Philippines expecting to observe. I left feeling like I had been studied. If this story hit something in you, please hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more people find this. Subscribe if you are not already here, because there is much more of this kind of storytelling coming. And leave a comment below. Tell me if you are Filipino, if you are American, if you are watching from somewhere completely unexpected. Tell me what you want the world to know about the Philippines that keeps getting buried. Tell me what Mang Eddie's words meant to you. I read every single comment. Every one. They told me the Philippines was poor. They were not even close to right.